My brother and I started out with 119 units. I sold the house that I had paid $14,000 for 1.6.
And I went to 10 banks and couldn't get financing. I was a junior in college.
The scariest deal I ever did. I had a prepayment penalty, $300,000 on a property.
It's a business of high risk, high reward. Everything is all about financial engineering.
We go back to the social media so-called gurus, the guys who preach real estate but don't own a single piece. Since 17 and 16, they've been preaching buy, buy, buy. Price don't matter, rents don't go down. Buying high is a big mistake, and once you own it, rents will always go down.
Guys, this is the second time I've ever done a podcast. And I will tell you, I'm a little nervous because I'm actually here with a real estate guy. Not one of these bullshit guys, not one of these syndicators, not one of these, I bought 20 houses, I flipped 20 deals, and I'm selling a program. This is a guy that has been in this business for decades, okay? He knows how to buy, he knows how to add value, and he is actually the same name as my father, who I idolized. This is Paul, the property boss, guys. I want you to say hi to him. I'll try not to bumble it, okay? Try not to have too big of a bro crush because he is the real deal. So, Paul, tell us why you even want to do a podcast.
Well, why not? Why not put myself out there just to prove what I'm actually saying is the truth? Where you have so many people out there that are just talking all kinds of nonsense back and forth. I mean, sometimes I scratch my head and I get aggravated listening to the nonsense that some of these people are spewing out there. And who's it going to? People who are trying to get a start in life. They have a dream and they're trying to figure out how to start at that dream and how to make it move. And they're starting out with both legs tied and both hands behind their back. There's no way to make it in this industry, in the real estate industry, starting out backwards. And of course, Mark, you are a legend yourself. So
in my own mind,
well,
right?
Well, you know, maybe a little bit, but when it came to me that I can do the podcast with you, I jumped on it immediately. It actually, the feeling's mutual. I'm excited to go through with this today.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
man.
you. So tell me, what was your first deal? Because we all remember our first deal.
Yeah, my first deal. This is a doozy.
I love these. I love them. The harder, the better.
Oh no, I'm about 17 years old, and I go to a Carlton Sheets real estate seminar.
Oh my God! I remember Carlton Sheets.
Buy real estate, no money down.
Yes.
And yeah, of course, blah blah blah. I go through it. I buy the cassette book. You remember the cassette book?
I do.
Yeah, because we didn't have DVDs, nothing back then. Mm-hmm. So now I'm driving around in my Ford Focus, listening to the cassettes, trying to learn about real estate. And then when I was done, I'd give the cassettes to my friend who we went chipped in on and bought them. So now he would drive around and listen, and we're going to take over the world. We're buying real estate. And nothing. And my father did have a couple of buildings in the Bronx at that time. Mm-hmm. Okay? So now my mother and father were divorced, and now I'm trying to, let me back up a sec, because we were no strangers to having the electricity turned off, to having the gas turned off. And back in those days in Brooklyn, I could tell you, Con Edison didn't care what time of the year it was. If it was cold, if it was hot, they were turning off the gas, they were turning off the electric. It did not matter. Right? And back in those days, we had a cold flat in Brooklyn. So when it was cold, it was cold. And I said to my mom one day, I always worked, from 11 years old, counting change in the supermarket and saving the tips when I was bagging for people, things like that. So now I said to my mother, about 17 years old, I said, Mom, I should buy the house from you. How the fuck are you going to buy the house from me, Paul? You got no money. What's your scam now? What do you want to do? I mean, this was the stuff I was getting. Ma, I want to buy the house. I think I can help out here. Finally, I go home one day, she's crying. And I said, why is it dark in here? They turned off the electric again. I was like, wow. I was like, seize the moment, Paul. All right, Ma, you know what? You should let me buy the house. She says, if you fuck me up, Paul, I'll never talk to you again. I says, Ma, I promise. So now, She says, how do we start? I said, well, just sign the house over to me, which she did. She says, well, now what? Where's my money? I says, no, now we have to refi the house. At 17, I knew about this.
This was from the Carlton Sheets?
No, this was from me paying attention.
Nice, nice.
So now I go to the bank. I can't. They're not going to have 17 years old. They're not going to give me a loan. So I go home. I said, Ma, listen, I need you to co-sign a loan. I almost got smacked. If I didn't duck, man, the breeze almost knocked me over. So now she says, I knew you were going to do it to me, Paul. I says, please, just hear me out. I give it to her. We go to Greenpoint Savings Bank.
Greenpoint Savings.
Greenpoint Savings Bank, okay?
Sure.
Get a loan. Refi, because there was no mortgage on the house at that time. So it was the loan. And first mortgage at that point. And 18%.
Jimmy Carter was president? Or right after Jimmy
This
Carter?
was 80s, so this was after Carter.
Yeah.
And I get it. Now, what do? I own the house. I refied for $57,000. I gave her what she paid for the house, because that's all she wanted, $14,000.
Nice.
Yeah. So now I have this house, but I have, better than that, I have money.
You have some
Now,
capital.
right. Give her 14, but having some money and being in the supermarket world, I wanted to open up a deli. So I opened up a deli, and now I'm working 14, 15-hour days. I'm like, you know what? The hell with this shit. I got rid of the deli, took the hit. I took the loss on the money, but it allowed me then to start to concentrate on getting into real estate. And some years later, I was able to start, and I started out, my brother and I started out with 119 units. I sold the house that I had paid $14,000 for 1.6.
That's a nice profit.
That is a nice profit.
I like profits like
Yeah,
that.
man, that was a score. And we were able to pick up this property. We turned it around because it was a dog. And now we still have it.
Do you remember the seller's name?
I do not remember
do
the
not?
seller's name. I do not remember.
It's funny because you've probably done so many deals like me. There are certain deals you remember, and there are certain deals that you don't remember. And I will tell you, my first deal, my mother sold it to me. My mother was a commercial broker,
Okay.
and she told me how to do the deal. And I went to 10 banks and couldn't get financing. I was a junior in college.
Okay.
And that you have no income.
No, you have nothing.
And I at this point, I said to my mother, I said, Mom, I don't think I'm going to be able to close on the property. Can we get my money back, my earnest money deposit? And she said, no. She said, I'm making dinner. And she was making brisket with mashed potatoes and the way, it's my father's favorite meal. And she said, come over, okay? And she said, bring that one-page sheet that you showed to the banks, what you were paying. Bring a copy of the contract, okay, and the renovation budget. I said, well, it's all in the one-pager, and which I didn't know back then. That's a deck today. So,
yeah.
And she said, come over for dinner. I said, okay. It's good you have a good home-cooked meal. So I came a little early. I loved spending time with my folks. I did, as I said before, I idolized my dad. He was a stand-up dentist. And my mother says, I have an investor for you. I said, that's great. I said, who is it? She says, he'll be home in a few minutes. It's your father. I said, did you talk to him? She said, no. Just give him the deal. He'll be your investor. So my dad comes in. I said, Dad, can I talk to you about some stuff? He goes, no, let's eat. Then we'll talk, okay? So we ate dinner, and he said, what did you want to talk to me about? I said, I'm buying this deal over by the college, and I can't get a loan. And he said, okay. He said, you have all the money? I said, I have all the money. He said, all right. He said, meet me tomorrow on such and such an address. I said, okay. So we go to United Bank and Trust. It was on LaSalle Road. And we get there at 9 o'clock. My father said to me, before you go in, what's the deal? I said, I don't know. What's the deal, Dad? He says, I want 60% of the deal. I said, I swallowed. And I said, that's pretty unfair. He goes, well, do you have any other options? I said, no. I said, I'll give you 40% of the deal. He goes, all right, I just wanted to see your reaction. So we shook hands, went inside. My father was going to put his hand out and go, okay, deal. We have to keep our word, he said. I'm like, okay. We go inside. He walks back to where the president's office. His name was John Morris, and his secretary was there. And she said, it's Dr. Shapiro here to see Mr. Morris. My son is with me. And he said, where's the coffee? So my father goes to get a cup of coffee. This guy comes out, my first bank president, and he says, come on in, Mark. We go and sit down. He says, tell me, your dad told me you need to borrow some money. I said, well, I have a deal. He said, you have the contract. I said, yeah, here's a copy of the contract. He said, do you have the renovation expenses? Do you have what the rent are going to be? I said, yeah, I have all this. I gave it to him. He said, okay. So you need 24 grand and you need 16 to renovate it. I'm like, yeah. He goes, okay, you have the money. I said, I actually have all the money to buy it and renovate it, but I'd like to borrow the money. He said, where's the money? I said, it's in Society for Savings, which was another local bank. He said, okay, will you put the money in the bank? I said, yeah. He goes, I'm going to give you a 90-day note. He said, you're going to keep it? You're going to sell it? What are you going to do? I said, I'd like to be able to make some money on it and buy other things. He said, all right. So he pulls out a grid note, 90-day note. He said, just sign it. He said, 2 days before the closing, have your attorney send over the RESPA. We'll send over the money in a bank check, because that's how they did it back then. And I come out, my father didn't do jack shit. And I gave him 40%. He made an introduction.
That was it.
Before I walked out, I said to John Morris, I said, why are you being so nice to me? He said, well, you know your grandfather had a bank. I said, yeah. So we bought your grandfather's bank. You guys are customers of this bank, okay? You're like family. So I'm not going to say no to you. I'm not going to say no to your father, because if you default, your father's going to pay it off. I said, okay. He said, but you're not going to default. He says, it's a good deal. He says, I like what you're doing, because we were renovating. It was a 3-family house. We were renovating the units and leasing it to the college students, but the parents were guaranteeing the rent. Mm-hmm. And the rent was $250, and we were raising the rents to $1,000. We did it. In 6 months, back then, it was 6 months and a day for capital gains, but we did a 1031, and I bought 2 6s side by side in the same market. Did the same thing. So my family helped me too. That's another similarity.
Yeah.
So what was the hairiest deal you ever did?
Hairy? No hairy deals. The scariest deal I ever did was accept the prepay, except to pay it. I had a prepayment penalty of $300,000 on a property. Mm-hmm. And I'm still young. We're going back 26, 25 years ago. And I'm still, young in the business. And I saw things changing, man. I had to jump in because there was going to be the opportunity. And I remember going to a mentor of mine and asked him, what should I do? And his response was, Paul, sometimes you have to kill the squirrel to get the cat. Go kill that squirrel. So now I paid a $300,000 prepay. Mm-hmm. And that allowed me to get into another 70-unit property, which then at this point now we're getting into 2007, where now I've got properties that I can really flush through and pull some money out of. And that's when we really started to grow. Yeah. I mean, I feel for the people who took it on the chin, but, it's always somebody's loss is somebody else's benefit. Mm-hmm. Thank God it was my benefit. Sorry for them, happy for me.
Well, look, it's a business of high risk, high reward.
Yes.
Okay. At the same time, you have to manage your financial risk, and you have to engineer the financial, stability of what you're doing. So everything is all about financial engineering. When '08 came around, and we had done some assemblages here or over there on the beach, and we're carrying some big nuts, and you know the market's coming unglued. We're buying foreclosed assets in one aspect, and I drive by this deal all the time. It's a block and a half across from the convention center in Miami, and Joe Shidrit bought it because we gave it back to the lender, and I gave it back to the lender without any deficiency, because first person I called when I said, look, our interest reserve is going to run out. I'm not going to replenish it. Okay? I need to sit down with you guys, and I'd like to do this in an orderly fashion. Do you want counsel there? Do you want your counsel there? Do you want my counsel there? And they're like, no, just come down. Let's have coffee. Let's talk about it. And they couldn't have made it more comfortable. And it was because it was a development loan. It was recourse. And they were nice enough to let me off the recourse. I did have to fund for them a 24-month carry of the insurance and the taxes, which was not a small check, because it's a block and a half on Miami Beach. And we assembled that site with our carry and with all of the architecture, about $18 million, and Joe bought it for around $140 million. And he's completing the project, but apparently he's got some issues these days because he defaulted on a bunch of stuff with Arbor, who, by the way, has roughly about 21,000 units they've taken back, and they're just replacing chairs on the Titanic. Apparently, they're probably going to fail. You weren't in Vegas this past week for multifamily. No. So in multifamily, there was 11,000 people, participants there. It was the most upbeat multifamily I'd ever been to. I didn't run into my frenemy, Grant, but he was there. I wish I had. And I will tell you that we had a dinner for Lumen. Are you familiar with Lumen?
I know the name.
So they're one of the larger bridge lenders. So we had a dinner for them at the Palm. And I didn't know this. It was completely caught me off guard. A couple of the directors from Home Depot came. And did you know that Home Depot is a large multifamily lender?
I did not know that.
I didn't either. And one of the guys who was on the board, he's like, I follow you. I love your shit. Are you really like that? I'm like, yeah, that's the fucking way I am, you know? I said, I don't put up with bullshit. And there's so much bullshit in this business. I said, look, we started out buying tough stuff, inner city stuff, and we just migrated out to the suburbs, and we migrated out from C product to C plus to B plus to A product. And then we started doing conversions and NewCo for sale product. And this guy's like, well, we can fund you 100%. I didn't know that. And we can give you at cost all the building materials because we have a power program for purchasing. So if you need their contact information, because he's like, your appliance, I'll get you better appliance deal. I'm like, well, we've been buying appliances from Ferguson for years. He's like, we'll get you better paint. I'm like, well, we buy from Glidden, okay? He's like, well, where do you get your maintenance supplies? So we get our maintenance supplies from Wilmar. I'm like, this is our program. It sets our cost. But he said, we can beat them on everything. I didn't know this. It was just mind-boggling.
Send me the contact, please.
I will. Yeah, his name's Brian. He's an incredible guy. And they are looking to put out, they said they lent $18 billion last year. That's a lot.
Huh. Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Because that other bank you spoke about is probably upside down.
Well, they're upside down. Then we went down to Meridian, and all these guys, all my guys were grabbing they were giving away free remote chargers, but they had kosher food and they had actually like a shul set up so we could daven there. I didn't daven with them, but they also are kind of upside down. And I don't know if you ever heard of Eastern Union.
No.
So Eastern Union was a religious Jews. They sprung off from Meridian, and they got a DOJ letter, so they're done. Mm-hmm. So we're going to see this, and these two deals I think I was telling you about when I was talking to you when I went to that Venezuelan
Couple
charity.
of weeks ago.
Yeah, these are deals from the old Silicon Valley Bank, and there's my estimation. This is just purely my conjecture. There's about $3 trillion worth of bad deals on the bank's books, but because of Dodd-Frank, and because of them changing the law from mark to market, they don't have to market to market, so therefore their net capital stays the same. So they're not showing the stress as badly,
Right.
but they still want to get rid of their deals. So
One way or the other, the pain is going to hit.
right.
You know, whether they show it, they don't show it, it's not really going to matter. When the pain comes, it's going to come hard.
How is the New York market holding up?
If you see some of the deals that come across my desk, I'm baffled. I'm legitimately baffled. For example, I get one deal come across my desk about 6 months ago, 55 units, Washington Heights. Beautiful market, okay? Beautiful market. The person purchased it in 15 million. 15 million, 2018. Come across my desk, 7.7. 7.7 million. And nobody's picking it up.
Why?
It's bad. It's a bad deal in a beautiful building. And this guy's willing to take the $300,000 haircut because he still owes $8 million on it. But there's other problems with the building that people just don't want to pick it up.
What's wrong with the building?
I didn't put too much attention to it because once I started speaking with my mortgage broker and then the real estate broker, and they were like, Paul, you know, it's a beautiful deal, but it's not. Stay away. And my mortgage broker sent it out to a bunch of people. Every one of them turned away. Then I get a deal on Madison Avenue, 103 units. Not going to give away the address because it's confidential.
Of course.
95 million. Go see the building. I run the numbers. I said, hold on a second. They want 95 million for this building? I said, I can't make sense of this until it gets down to 45. I send it to my banker. I says, Matt, do me a favor. Take a look at this. Let me know if I'm backwards here. He says, you're right in the ballpark. It's the only way this works is 45 million or less. If you want to struggle with it, you can go up to 50, 55. But I says, well, you know I don't struggle. If I'm not buying it right, I'm not buying it.
Right.
And it's still on the market, but this guy was in big trouble. He's going to lose it. He's going back to the bank. He's got a hard refi coming up, and there's no way out. So the bank is going to call it. And that's what's out there in Manhattan now.
So that is symptomatic what's out there everywhere.
Everywhere.
So, as you know, newer investors, the last decade and a half, became these social media syndicators.
Yeah.
And I don't know how new you are to social media, but you know I'm very new to it, and you know we're learning how to use the influence, and we're learning how to use the audience. These older social media syndicators, the Rod Khleifs, the Robert Martinez, the Grant Cardones. Okay, Grant's in a different space.
Right.
These guys would buy deals. They would finance it with bridge debt, and they would buy it 2, 3, 4 years ago, and rates were 4, 5%. Then this amazing administration, greatest presidency ever, you can tell I'm dripping with sarcasm.
Yes, I know.
14 rate hikes, and then money cost now 12%. These 24, 36, and 48-month bridge loans have to reset. It's time to refi. You got to pay the piper. Well, if money goes from 4 to 12, it means you're going to borrow 2/3 less. So guess what? Do these guys have the money to stroke a check to pay the debt down? All those deals are bad, and all those deals are going back or have gone back. Yep. And so they've gone back where they've put a deed in lieu in escrow.
Yep.
So the bank doesn't have to pay the insurance or take the risk. But that's why I said there is somewhere in the $3 trillion in toxic assets that are coming through the mill. Now, we're seeing it here in South Florida. I'm seeing it in Texas because we're now buying at 40 cents on the dollar in Texas. And this year we'll buy 5,000 units just from those deals, those types of projects, where the bank can't take a cash deal. They actually have to take a restructure of the written down debt and finance it for us. So we only will buy it if they finance 100% of the deal. We'll finance our own rehab and our own interest carry if it doesn't carry, or we'll reserve it, but we control it. Bank doesn't control it.
So when you're financing yourself, are you self-insuring as well?
So the way we insure is we use a master policy,
right,
and we have a reinsurance policy for the first loss.
Okay.
So up to a certain point,
right.
So we go up to $500,000, and if there's that loss, that is all underwritten by us. But that's laid off onto a reinsurer,
right,
where they hold that portion, and then every so many dollars comes from whatever each month from the payment, and it is then segregated to the reinsurer.
See, here's what I'm seeing in New York, and nationwide, actually. We go back to the social media so-called gurus, the guys who preach real estate but don't own a single piece. They've been, since 17 and 16, they've been preaching buy, buy, buy. Price don't matter, rents don't go down. Well, they find out the hard way that buying high, rents also go down. Buying high is a big mistake, and once you own it, rents will always go down, depending on the market you're sitting in. You know, are there more asses than seats? Are there more seats than asses? What's the buildings going up? What's happening there? And then, in a place like New York, the biggest factor of all, you get all these people buying and overpaying, but more importantly, they're not considering rent stabilization. And in New York, everything, in New York City, everything is run by the rent stabilization agreement, okay? So now, where you may think you're gonna get these increases, if they vote low, you're not gonna get them. And you may be buying something off of a pro forma, but guess what? That don't work out. So you bought with a very low rate, you bought with a very high price. That is the biggest killer right there, high price. Rates will always go up. The 20-year average of an interest rate is about 8%. So anybody who knows, anybody who's in this industry should know that if you run your track and you run the record, you'll see that those numbers are going to be running steady at about 8% once you average them out. So run your numbers at that. Run your numbers at 8%, at least this way, you'll be covered somewhere along the line. If you're in a high rate atmosphere or a low rate atmosphere, you'll somewhere meet in the middle there. But these people never took that into consideration. They just wanted to buy. Money was easy. They were getting money everywhere. They were syndicating deals. They knew nothing about the industry. And then you got all these assholes telling you, just buy the deal, buy the deal. Not one of those assholes is teaching them the fundamentals of real estate.
Well, of course.
Okay? That is the key to success in real estate, learning the fundamentals, knowing what it takes to be in this business and survive.
So
go ahead.
This is my new paradigm shift, and you can agree or disagree. I'm still going to respect you, okay? And by the way, whatever cologne you're wearing, it smells really good.
It's from under cheese.
From under cheese. They don't even know. They don't even know what this is. They're too young. These are all kids. These are all kids. So the classic 3 words of real estate is location, location, location. Okay? And with that said, that means a lot in buying a deal. But I'm going to change it because I'm shifting the paradigm. because it doesn't matter whether you buy or a good location. It's execution, execution, execution. If you buy a deal in a market that you're good at executing, you'll make money. If you buy a deal in a market that's tough, but you know how to execute, you're gonna make money, okay? If you buy a deal and you can't execute it, and that's what all these social media guys, they don't know how to run a fucking deal. They bought a deal based on an OM from a broker, and we all know brokers are pretty much full of shit. The broker I have, the broker I get. My broker can turn billions into millions, okay?
Sounds like a gem.
That's the way they are. So I only deal with a handful of guys who have sold me the same shit year after year. Yep. We went out for dinner to Carbone's in the Aria, okay?
Okay.
And we took a bunch of guys out for dinner. It was my chief operating officer's birthday, Rob. He turned 44. And one of my guys was there who is at Marcus, okay? He sold me my first deal in 1990, and he's been selling me units ever since. He's probably sold me 5,000 or 6,000 units. Another guy, Tom Wilkinson, probably sold me 10,000 units, okay? He sold me a portfolio that Alan Gross tried to buy, okay? And it was 6,000 units, 16 different assets with all kinds of elements. 4 of them were Litech deals. There were 6 of them were market rate deals where we ended up having to buy the debt on it to get a clear path on the deals. The balance of the deals were okay. 2 of them I gave back to the lender. I didn't want them. But after I closed, I had to do that. He would show me how to structure the deal. He would take me through the pitfalls. And a week before the deal was awarded, the seller had a stroke. And this was back when I was obnoxious, and I thought when I took a shit, it didn't stink. So I fired up the jet, and I flew out there. And I went to the guy's hospital room. His wife was there, and he was in a semi-state of conscious. His name was Don Sau. And I just sat there. I spent a day and a half just sitting there. I was eating in the cafeteria, and he finally, was conscious enough. It was a minor stroke, but it screwed him up because he was older. And he said to me when I was getting ready to leave, I said, I'm going back to Miami. He said, I'm going to sign a deal with you. I said, why? He said, well, you're paying less than Alan Gross, and I got to stay in the deal with you because you're buying my son's construction company, you're buying my management company, you're buying my corporations, because that was my best path to it. He said, because you're a gentleman, and you sat here, and you took my wife for coffee, and you took her for breakfast. I'm like, oh, she told you that? She said, yeah. So it's not about deal. It's not about the money. It's not about the fancy cars. It's about how we treat one another. And seeing these social media syndicators, that's what got me doing this. That's what pissed me off. Okay, you said Carlton Sheets. I remember Carlton Sheets. Carlton Sheets is a byproduct of my mentor, Robert G. Allen. There was another guy. I don't know if you remember him. Well, Carlton was on the yacht. There was a guy that used to say the 3 words. You have to, 3 words, okay? His name was Thomas Vu. He was like late at night, okay? And the 3 words were, and I would stay up every night to try to listen to it, never give up, okay? And that was his secret to success in real estate. I have no idea what ever happened to these guys, okay? I mean, Carlton Sheets preached nothing down, which today we know as subject to. Okay? And then the olden days when we used to flip a deal, which in my career I've only done 1 real flip, where I bought it, I sold it, I was prepared to close with my own capital, but I sold it the same day, a simultaneous closing. I've only done 1 my whole career, 300 plus deals, okay? And all these guys, they package read things. They use new words. Hooks. Pace Moby, this guy. Pace Moby's not bad. Tom Cruise, Section 8. I mean, we teach Section 8. It takes 15 minutes to teach Section 8. He charges $7,500 to teach you how to do Section 8. So you get a CRM, whoopee shit. You can buy a CRM with PropStream for $79 a month.
That's the problem, Mark. That's the problem with all these fucking shitheads out there. They know everybody out there wants the ticket. They want their shot and a chance to get successful. Let's jump on it. Let's capitalize on it. I get people calling me up in the office all the time. Paul, we'll pay anything for your property. Oh, will you? Hey, you know what? This property's worth $9 million. I'll sell it to you for 14. Okay. This is the stupidity that I get. Will you hold a note? No, I'm not going to hold a fucking note. I'm not going to hold a note.
Of course.
You know, and now, if it behooves me to hold a note on a square deal, I absolutely will.
Of course.
But to somebody like this, who I know, it's a foregone conclusion to hold a note on somebody who knows nothing about the business. The only thing I'm getting out of that is my property back worse.
Oh, yeah.
I'm getting it back in far worse condition. But they're taught that it's easy, that you can do it. Here, another super guru tries to take me for my money, but sends me to go look at a property with one of the chiefs in his organization. To go look at a property not far from here. And it's funny because I said to him, I said, well, it's a beautiful building, but what's the out here? He said, well, you know, we have a kind of figure. I says, listen to me. You're syndicating this deal. There's got to be an out, okay? The out's going to be refi. So now what are you going to do when rates go up? Oh, rates are going to go up. No, you better believe rates are going to go up.
We have to
No,
plan
they're
for
not. They're not going to go up. Listen to me. Rates are going to go up. I know they taught you in school that rates aren't going to go up, but I'm telling you that rates will go up, and you will be fucked. And sure as shit, rates are up, and they are fucked.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Well, you know, it's a crazy thing. So there's an area here, and I always call them gap areas between where Wynwood is and Midtown and where downtown toward 95, toward Little Haiti, toward Ironbound, toward Little River, toward Magic City. And there's a little area, it's about 10 blocks, okay? So I took the guys, I took a crew, and this young man is buying this deal, and it's empty. And he's doing 2 deals around the corner, so he took me to the deal where he did a proof of concept. I think it was 20 units. And I said to him, I said, look, because your partner is Gabriella's cousin, if I like the deal, I'll do the deal with you. I'm going to come out, I'm going to walk the deal. I said, and we're going to film it. I want to see what you did. So he takes me through his proof of concept. It's empty. The walls aren't plumb. His property manager's there. I said, your floors are sagging. I said, did you sandwich these joists? He goes, yeah. How'd you know? I said, bro, you do this 40 years. You know this business. I said, you can't even get a CO. He goes, no, we're going to get it. I'm like, no, you're not. I'm like, you can't. I said, why did you spend money on brick out the cabinets don't even fit. What did you do? He puts in splits. I'm like, do you have a rented? So I had Adrian, there's a little sign in the window, call, because he's telling me we're renting them for $1,900. Brand new in Wynwood is $1,900, $2,000, $2,100, with amenities, with parking. This is in a flex area. So it's the ghetto. Okay?
flex area.
It's, what do you want to call it?
I got you.
It's workforce housing. I mean, we just call it, So he shows me this deal, and okay. I said, number one, you're overpaying by $2.5 million. I said, if you can negotiate the deal down, okay, and if the guy will take the deal in paper, then we'll put up the rehab dollars, okay? And, because I actually like the building. I said, but here's your new rehab number. Here's how the deal come out of the blocks. Leased up, it'll make a 7 or 8 cap. I said, and my risk is $1.6 million. So, it's a low risk. Right. So we went to eat, but before we went to eat, and I took him to a little Cuban joint, on 8th Street. So before we went to eat, I'm looking at the building, and I said, look, and he was doing a demo deal around the corner. He was telling me, I do this with construction, I do that with construction. And I know the guy knows nothing about construction, okay? And I said, what kind of phase is that? Is it a 3-phase or is it a single-phase building? Guy has a 50% shot to get it right, okay? Now, you know it's 43 units, so you know it's going to be 3-phase. But you're staring at it right there. They're staring at it coming in. He said, it's single-phase. And I don't remember. I think his name was Thomas. I think that was his name. Adrian, was his name Thomas? Oh. You weren't with us that day that we were filming that property in Little Havana. So I said, look, Thomas, see where the service is coming in? See that there's 3 phases coming in? He goes, I got it wrong, right? I said, you did.
Yeah, right, you did.
I said, okay, let's go have something to eat, and I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't do this deal. And I'm not going to do this deal with you. So we went and we had something to eat. And it blows my mind because he raised money for 3 deals in that area from people that aren't even in the U.S. They're from the U.K. And he didn't raise $1 million. He raised $5 to $8 million. He's going to lose the buildings. He can't rent them. And that's what's going on because people think real estate is the greatest thing in the world. I made more money in Bitcoin in the last 18 months. Fuck.
You know, they want to do fix and flips. They know nothing about construction. Then they want to buy real estate. They just forget about the fix and flips. Now they want to buy their properties. They know nothing about the municipalities that they're dealing with. What is it going to be required to do work in your building from your municipality? They know nothing. What do I have to do if I want to change a light, if I want to change a faucet, if I need to change a toilet? Is there a permit process that I have to go through? Things like that. They don't know. They don't know what holds it up. Is this permit process going to take me 2 weeks before I get a permit to change a toilet? So now I have this apartment rented and ready to go, and I can't move in because they can't shit? I mean, think about that. These are the things that people just don't know. And they're getting into the business and taking the L at every turn. It's...
For guys that don't know what the L is, that's loss.
The loss.
Not loser, loss. But they are losers, too. So, do you do your own turnovers?
I have my own people.
You have your own crews that do them?
Yes. I have, all my properties have supers. And I know people don't like the word super, but, you know, I deal with it because that's what they are, supers. So, all my buildings have supers.
What is the definition of a superintendent?
I have no idea.
Me neither. But it's a good name.
Yeah, it is. I didn't invent it. I just use it.
What was the guy in Three's company? What was his name? Schneider?
Schneider. He was the super.
Suzanne Summers.
That's right. He was the super.
Yes.
And who was the other guy? Mel. Used to come in. What show was that?
Was that Barney Miller? No, that wasn't Barney Miller.
No, he used to come in with his cigarette in his mouth or a toothpick in his mouth and his sleeve rolled up, greasy-looking guy.
Yes. What show was that? That wasn't the Jeffersons.
No.
It wasn't Good Time. Was it Good Time?
No.
No.
And it reminded me of a building in Astoria for some reason. I don't know why. But yeah, I mean, these were supers. This is what they did. They took care of the building. They took care of the tenants. They took care of everything. And that's what I have. I have supers. I have managers that go around to the properties. Yes, absolutely. And sometimes they have to direct the supers. I have a super in every building, and then I have floaters. Floaters go around where help is needed. Mm-hmm. You know, and you know sometimes you can't expect somebody to be up all night, be on call all night. So you have to have a floater going around. Somebody has to be on call in the event of an emergency. Not that they're working, but they're waiting.
So here's a totally non-real estate best corned beef pastrami in New York City.
Cats.
Best.
Yes.
Fucking the best.
My wife is over there. My wife is saying cats.
The best.
Yep.
I actually have been craving it so bad, I want to fly up just for the day, just for Katz's.
If you come up, let me know. We'll go get cats.
There's actually a place here in it's in Hollywood called Grandpa's, and they have Carnegie meat,
Okay.
and it's pretty good because I was a Carnegie fan. I love Katz's because we used to. So my wife, my only wife, okay, not married to her anymore. Her parents had a Thai store around, what's the street? It's 2 blocks off of Houston that has a Meridian in it. It's got a, it's one way each way, and they had a Thai store there. They manufactured.
Okay, so Cats is on Houston. You're going east-west if you're talking that way.
So I'm going away from the FDR,
Ludlow?
2 blocks to the left. 2 blocks and take a left.
It's got a Meridian in there.
That would take you back to Chinatown.
No. Yeah, that is Broadway.
That
That
is
is Broadway. Broadway has
So
the Meridian in the middle.
I used to go there. We would go to the Thai store. We'd park the car, and then her uncle, his name was Shelley, he would tell me, okay, get 2 corned beefs, get 2 pastrami's, ask for extra bread, ask for extra pickles, because they didn't charge you for the pickles, okay? And we didn't get coleslaw. And they didn't charge you for extra bread, and then 1 brisket, and then we'd bring them back, and they lived in Coney Island, and we'd whack it all up, and it would feed like a dozen of us. And I would get full just taste testing everything, because they give you the little plate and let you taste test it, and then they give you that little ticket, they punch it. And I would rather, look, I like to eat nice food, but for me, I'd rather have a burger and fries. That's my go-to meal, even though last night was Chilean sea bass with asparagus. But she cooked.
Sure.
She loves to cook. I would rather have a corned beef sandwich, lean, on rye with mustard and full sours than I think anything.
So now you're talking about that area. Have you, obviously you've been there, have you ever been to Sammy's Romanian Steakhouse? Right off of Delancey.
No.
Okay, because that is on the same streets, right on the corner
It's
of
Delancey.
Delancey.
That's Delancey.
Okay.
That's where they are.
Yeah, so then this is on the corner of Delancey, and I want to say Forsyth.
Good.
If you like it, yes, it's good. It's been there forever. You go into place, you have every star in their mother's picture on the wall. It's been there a long time.
So my father-in-law's parents lived in Brooklyn. They lived in Cadman Plaza. Right
Cadman
over the
Plaza.
Cadman Plaza,
Downtown,
right
yeah,
over the
downtown
bridge.
Brooklyn.
And whenever we would go there, he would always take everybody to Peter Luger's.
Of course.
And the other day we were walking, when we were in Vegas, and we saw Peter Luger's, and he said, best steak ever. I'm like, I don't know if it's the best steak ever. The steak sauce is good. So he checked on Google, what's the best steak, considered the best steak in the country? Peter Luger's.
Yes.
Is it still that good?
Yes, it is. Growing up, I used to walk there from my house.
Really?
Yeah. I would walk there. My mother, well, after we would, as I was older and couldn't afford it, then I would walk there. I mean, as a young kid, we could never go there. But I remember the first time I took my mother there. Man, she was in glory land. But then once we were in our 20s and we had a couple of dollars, I was there all the time.
Wow.
Now, you can be inside waiting for hours for a table, and still the same, no credit card, unless it's a Peter Luger credit card or cash. That's the best.
Can you buy yourself a table?
No.
With a maitre d'?
No.
So like here at Joe's Stone Crab, you can buy yourself a table. Now, I started eating kosher again about 25 years ago. So back when I was married, there was a maitre d', his name was Bones. You give him $100. The line would be for 3 hours.
You get right
Mr.
in.
Shapiro, come this way. And you could still do that a lot here in Miami. And I haven't been to Peter Luger's in a long time. The steak sauce was always remarkable. It was always incredible.
I never liked the steak sauce.
Why?
Because the steak
Sweet.
itself was beautiful. They come in, butter crackling on the plate. Man, that's it. Now I'm starving.
Yeah, that's
Now there's a problem.
definitely.
Yeah, that's funny. We're from the same area. Wow, look at that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
It's it's a small world. So in the real estate space, it's a really small world, and we all know each other. I will tell you that over the years, I've done back when I was young. I did some deals with some monsters. Do you remember the mortgage brokers, Coopers and Horwitz?
I do not.
So they used to do a lot of our debt placement. They introduced me to Cantor Fitzgerald, who taught me how to buy paper,
Okay.
and that helped me grow exponentially. But Coopers and Horwitz, I'm buying a portfolio, 35. It's in Texas, and I don't have all the equity. And they introduced me to a guy named Richard Calico, AJ Calico.
I know that name.
And they're pretty much royalty in the multifamily space. So I go to his building, I go to his office, everybody is squeezed on top of everybody. And I come into his little office, and he's got a love seat, and there's a guy named Phil Levine who introduces himself to me. That's Arlen Realty. That was one of his partners. And then this young guy named Bobby Greenberg. And they looked at the deal, and they said, we'd like to play golf with you. I'm like, okay. They said, we heard you're a good golfer, which everybody in my family used to be a scratch. I was the only one. I used to play to an 8, but I could play lower, but I would keep it at an 8. So when if I did a scramble and they put me in as the A, we would get the extra strokes. So we could, I guess it's cheating. I guess it's stacking the deck. So, but I'm a little guy, so I'm not long. I'm just accurate. And so we go and play, and we are, I think we're on the 6th or we're on the 7th hole, and Richie Calico, and I'm playing with Bobby Greenberg, who was a scratch, and we were playing skin straight up 1,000 a hole, and it's the golf course in Great Neck, and Calico loses his ball. So I hit my second shot, I'm on the green, and I go to help Calico find his ball, okay? And he's looking around, and he's, can't find it. And I see a ball, okay? And as soon as I see a ball, he says, I found it. So I knew he was playing a Titleist HD. I never forgot this. So I reached down, I picked up, and I put the ball in my pocket. So Calico's ball had a perfect unobstructed view so he could hit it to the green,
Okay.
the flat iron. So I don't know what to do. I'm trying to get these guys to write a big check. This portfolio is 4,200 units. And do I come clean with my conscience that I picked up his ball? Because I actually found his ball, okay? Because I wanted to win, okay? That's how competitive I am. So I went to Bobby, and I said, Bobby, I have Calico's ball in my pocket. He goes, really? I go, yeah. I said, because remember, we marked our balls. You signed my ball, I signed your ball. Okay, Phil signed Calico's ball, and Richie signed Phil's ball.
So you guys had a bunch of signed balls.
So signed balls, yeah, our nuts. I never thought of it that way. It's just so when we turn them in. And Bobby said, don't you say a fucking word. We're doing the deal with you, okay? We know you're an honest guy. I said, yeah, but I wasn't being honest. He goes, that's not Calico's ball. He dropped it. He's a fucking cheater. I said, okay. I said, is he going to be a cheater in the deal? He says, no. He's good. So I bought this portfolio. I was young. I was 35. We made about $1,700 a door. We turned it over. They wanted to sell it. I'm like, I would rather refinance it. They're like, no, we're going to sell it. And so I took my money, I 1031 into some other stuff. And it was the most pleasant experience I ever had. On the flip side, I do a deal with the Katzes. who are partners with the Wilpons. And Richie Katz, okay, and Michael were the cheapest motherfuckers. Every month, distributions, they had to co-sign every fucking check. And the deals were here in Miramar. And we did exceedingly well on the deal. And they tried to jam it up my rear at the closing on top of it. So, guy with a tough-ass reputation and guys with stellar reputations. Complete opposite in the business.
You know, there's so much money to be made in this industry. I don't know why people feel like they have to just go that extra mile. There's somebody I used to manage property for. I'm not going to throw his name out there. But I remember I first took over the property. I was going to buy it. And from the seller, he recommended my company to manage it. So I went down, I met with him, and it was him and his partner in the business. They syndicated the deal. These guys were Wall Street crew. And he said to me, well, Paul, you know, why didn't you buy the building? Because I had him on the wall for far less with far more than you're paying. And he said to me, oh, well, price don't matter. I said, since when?
Of course it does.
And I said to him, I said, price is everything. Price is the only thing that matters right now. Fast forward, now I'm managing the property for him, and every single month, he nickel and dimes me on every charge, every expense. He's driving my office crazy, so I call him up. I said, hey, leave my office alone. Stop breaking their balls with all these little petty things that you're going after. He said, well, you know, I got to watch the money. I says, you got to watch the pennies, huh? I says, you overpaid by a lot on the deal. You told me price don't matter, and now you're trying to stick it in my ass every fucking month? No. Give it to somebody else to manage. Then what happens, I open up another company, another management company with some other partners, and I bring him there, and we get it off the ground. My brother and I get it off the ground, get the place running. It's humming along, and we sell it. And we get out of the management company, and he's then, well, I want to come back with you. I said, we don't want you. We don't want you. We don't want to manage your property. I want nothing to do with you. As a matter of fact, we were in contract to buy that property for less than what he paid about 5 months ago, but he tried to hit me over the head over a roof issue. All right? And the roof issue was about $175,000. And he was playing games with the numbers, but he didn't know who was the guy who owned the management company. He knew that, but he didn't know I still talked to everybody. So now I get the proposals. So I know what the roof proposal really is. And they wanted me to accept the terms of the roof, telling me it was only going to be $100,000 to fix the roof, and they would eat that in the cost. I said, yeah, but that's not the cost. So it's not $100,000 off. It's $175,000, and now for my time, it's $200,000. And going back and forth, we walk away from the deal. I'm in the deal again. Everything is fixed. I went to the municipality. I spoke to the building inspector. Everything is signed off. Clean C of O. That's it. Now we'll be closing this deal for less.
Nice.
For less.
The problem is they don't realize what is really in. They don't realize that we're all. It's very incestuous, the business, and that we all have either owned it or knew somebody that owned the deal. Mm-hmm. So, like, here's the crazy thing. So Ian Hancock, who is our operational partner, the first deal that we bought from the remnants of the Silicon Valley Bank is a place called Vanderbilt Lodge. 106 units, small deal, but we got them to actually peel off the first asset from the failure. And we bought it out the door at an 11 cap on a trailing T3. And they financed 100% of the deal at 5%, interest only, for 60 months.
A property 11 cap?
Yes. Okay. And guess what? Ian had owned it 11 years ago.
Wow.
Then we had another deal that came to us called Willow Apartments, 240 units, and that when it got underwritten, they changed the name. So I'm looking at the address, and then I'm looking at the actual pictures of the deal, and I said, I think I used to own this deal. And I called up Ian. I said, Ian, did I own this deal? He goes, well, let me check. He goes, you did. I said, okay, we're not buying this deal. I hate this deal. So he calls me back. He said, we have another deal. We just underwrote it. He goes, it's another deal I used to own in Humboldt, Texas, which is like, was a moonshine area. Mm-hmm. This one's a little newer. It's 2003. It's a B+, and it's another same 100% finance, interest only, 60-month deal from the same bank that took over Silicon Valley Bank. It's called First Citizens, and they still have. I think they still have 27 deals. So we're trying to do a 3-deal package right now with them, and that'll be about 800 units. So I would just like to buy the whole thing, because it's much easier to finance 250 million than it is to finance 25 million. But they're giving us it. They're like little by little by little. So we'll see. But these deals all come right out the door. They're at least better than a 6 cap, and the deferred maintenance is minimal. Now we're going in and we're doing it $7,500 on a per door basis, or on a per unit basis.
How much?
$7,500.
$7,500
Yeah.
a door.
So they have the units are all beautiful, but I want to change out the black splash.
Any
I
deferred?
want to lower the counter. Not a lot.
Okay.
A lot. Some roofing, minor stuff. Some of the buildings need new gutters, so we'll just take it all down and put it all back up, new flash it.
Just a little CapEx stuff in the apartments.
Yep.
Paving outside, roofs, nothing like that.
Most of the concrete is good. Most of the asphalt is good. Most of the drainage is good.
75,000 a door.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see. Oh, and by the way, it's non-recourse. By the way, I'm allergic to recourse.
But dealing with regular banks, dealing with community banks, dealing with even the bigger banks, everything is coming in recourse. It's hard.
No, yeah.
It's hard to get a non-recourse loan, man. They're not going to go for, especially now.
It's funny because when we started this Shapiro Capital, we started it in May of 2024. And Adrian was the second employee. Adrian's friend Christian was the first employee. He was the one that said, hey, I want to make some videos with you. What do you think? I'm like, getting coffee in Starbucks. He goes, yeah, but I heard you screaming at somebody on the phone. I'm like, well, he works for me. He was doing something stupid. He goes, well, what do you do? I said, I own some apartments in the real estate space. He goes, do you know a lot about real estate? I said 40 years. I think I do. I don't know. He goes, could you talk about it? I'm like, maybe. And then it became crazy. I think we have 47 people now.
Good for you.
We just did our flagship space.
Good for you.
We just finished the TI. And we'll see. We'll see how this goes. And we're teaching people simple techniques. We've had now 55 deals closed since we put up our course, our school.
Nice.
June 20th. 55 people don't know anything about real estate. And the ones that took to it are on their 3rd, 4th, and 5th deal.
Beautiful. And these people coming in cash heavy. When I say cash heavy, I don't mean into the deal, but they have money to spend.
So typical.
They're real investors.
Right. So typical, my first student, her name is Lydia Walker, and she's now engaged. Before she was dating her boyfriend, Cy. And incredible story. She was the first person to sign up for this course that I wrote. And it's really kind of a knockoff of Robert Allen's Nothing Down, more subject to, sub to. using, you know, buying the right asset, putting a Section 8 resident in, refinancing it, doing it again. So her first deal was a cash deal. We went first to Montgomery. She had sourced a deal.
Alabama.
Yeah.
Okay.
She started on June 20th. We got 2 deals really close, but we couldn't. For 2 weeks, her and I just sat on Zoom calls because I'm on my Zoom calls twice a week. And I got to know her. So her father killed her mother. Okay. And maybe we won't put this in. And father went to prison. He got killed in prison. Okay. And she put herself through college. She sold roofs. She didn't want to take a 9 to 5. And I met her, and I instantly said, this is a really good, genuine person. I said, I'm going to do everything I possibly can to change her life.
Good for you.
The third deal was in St. Louis, Missouri. Our second deal was in St. Louis, Missouri, but they wouldn't let us in to inspect. So we killed the deal. Third deal, she pays $34,000 for a 3-1. We put in a second bathroom. She does a mod rehab, $35K. She goes to Section 8. It just appraised for $150,000. She used all her own cash. She just borrowed $110,000 on the refi. She still has $600 a month in cash flow. She bought a house, got engaged. She bought a house with this guy, Cy, got engaged. And they just closed on their first two-family, first duplex in St. Louis. And they have a second duplex under contract. So that'll be 4 properties since June. And she's now ready. I got to buy 20 units, she tells me. I'm like, guys, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Yep.
Slow and steady. So
This is not a race.
I have one kid. He's insane. Took a year off, played professional soccer in the Mexican League. His name is Raymond Gonzalez. He's in Oklahoma. He gets a full ride to University of Oklahoma to play soccer. He gets a second ride for academics. He works all summer with me. He buys 3 properties. His father's his investor. His first one was a 2-1 for $15,000. He put in 10, and it appraised at 60. He refinanced it. He bought his first 3 properties with his dad as a partner. Now his brother and him are buying his 4th and his 5th. And he calls me at the end of the summer. He says, Mark, I don't know what to do. I said, what do you mean you don't know what to do? He goes, do I want to go play soccer or do I want to take the academic scholarship? I said, where's your mom and dad? Because I became friendly with his mom and dad. I'm like, get them on the phone. We were driving for my uncle's 89th birthday to Naples. I have Gabrielle in the car, and I'm talking. We're having a family meeting, okay? And he tells his parents, and his father goes like, that's great, because you're doing so well with the real estate. Do you really want to play soccer? He says, no, I played it. I played it at a high level. So he takes the other scholarship, and the kid he's the sweetest. He's a gentleman. He's a good son. It's like, where are these people? Because you see a lot of these crazy people down here. They're good people all over the place. And the knowledge that you have can help all those people. So I tell you, you can do so much with this. You can teach these people this stuff.
Yes. I had a student who couldn't afford to get into a weekend thing I was doing, a weekend lecture speaking. And she made something like 200 empanadas and sold them. So she can come up with the money to get
Love
into.
empanadas.
Me too. My wife makes the best empanadas.
Nice.
And it impressed me so much that she went and worked her ass off just to get in there for the weekend so she can learn something to be into that weekend course, which was wild. But when you want to learn, man, you're going to do it. You know, you'll beg, steal, or borrow if you really want to get ahead.
So like Lydia, we actually offered Lydia a job working for Shapiro Capital. Most of the people that are on the real estate and the coaching side have come from within our community. I've trained them.
Nice.
They've gone through the course. She said, Mark, I'm very flattered, but I want to be a full-time real estate investor. Then she wanted to learn the multifamily, which is one of our more expensive programs because it's more one-on-one with me.
Mm-hmm.
And she asked, and I told her, I said, look, here's what we're going to do. Okay? I'm going to let you have it for free. It's $15,000 we charge people. I'm going to let you have it for free, but when you make some money, I want you to pick a charity, and I want you to make a nice donation, and I'll leave it up to you. And she never misses a call. She's going to buy herself something 5 units or bigger. And this girl's analyzing 10 deals a day.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And you know, truth is, after you analyze 100, you may find one. But you, at least each one you analyze, you learn something new with.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of especially in the larger scale stuff that you and I do. There's a lot of carnage in the deals. There's a lot of trapdoors. There's a lot of things that the operating statement doesn't show. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't really understand how sophisticated some of the sellers can be because they're all selling stuff on a projection. They're not selling it on an actual. And everybody is on the come. Oh, we're going to do this, this, and this, and it's going to increase the value. Okay, you can increase values by doing certain things, but you can't buy a deal that is here, that you're buying it based on this price point. You can barely buy it here. You have to buy it here.
Yeah. Again, you know, the other flip side is people want to grow so much. They want to grow so much that they start to just jump into things without knowing. I mean, I see it all the time in these deals. I mean, we'll get the setups. Now, what anybody would consider an offering memorandum is a setup to me.
Absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
so
that's what us old timers.
Yeah.
And do you call a deal a job?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do. Yep.
Yeah.
Send me that job.
I have no idea. Why do we call it a job?
I don't
Because it's your job.
because it was work.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, today yes, of course they're work, but closings have become so simple. I mean, I did a closing about 3 weeks ago from the hotel lobby with my daughter on her laptop, emailing back and forth.
DocuSign.
Yeah, everything was DocuSign, and then notarizing and gone.
Yeah.
It was done within a half hour in the hotel lobby. They've become so non-eventful, but you have to.
Do you remember the days where you'd go
God,
and
are you
you'd
kidding me?
sit? I mean, I had a closing. When we bought that portfolio, it was a 3-day closing. It took me 3 days to sign all the docs.
Mm-hmm.
And each day we had a different pen.
Mark, I remember sitting in closing tables 8 hours, 9 hours, 7 hours, arguing shit back and forth.
Oh, of course.
All right. And then on a new deal, purchasing a deal, you would, okay, well, you know what? Go check out count the refrigerators. Get in every apartment. Now you're there.
Well, you have to.
Yeah, I know that. But, you know, this was back in the day. I have somebody on site going, all right, go check out this room. Go check out that room. See if that was fixed. See if this was fixed. And then lawyers playing the game. Who's the better lawyer? Who's the bigger shot in the room? Leaving the room for a half hour, an hour. I remember one closing I was at. They made us sit at the closing table for about an hour and a half. I said to my attorney, I said, Mike, order some pizza. Beautiful, beautiful mahogany desk.
Mm-hmm.
I'll fix your ass. We order 2 pies. We take the 2 pies and we put them on the mahogany desk. Then, after the closing, we moved the pies off of it, and the condensation from the heat on the bottom of the table completely destroyed their beautiful mahogany desk.
Did they bill you for it?
No. No, because they didn't feed us. You see, if they would have left us there that long and they would have fed us, that would never have happened. Play, we play. I mean, yeah, it's a little kid shit type of thing, but you know what? Do the right thing here. We're clients. We got a $9 million deal going on, and you want to treat us like this? Kiss my ass.
It's funny because I'm 26 years old. I'm actually 20. Was it 86 to 86? It was 86. Tax law changed. So I'm 26 years old, and we're at closing a deal in Springfield. At
Mass.
Our law firm is Bacon Wilson, and I'm dating my wife at the time, and we're going to Newport for New Year's Eve with my friend Greg Kelly and his wife, because he was married. He was a little older than me. He was also in the cleaning business, but he was also in the apartment business. And I'm buying this portfolio, and I'll remember the names of the two sellers. They were pricks. And I was buying the deal right, so they were barely able to pay off their debt. But we had to close prior to midnight because of the tax law change. And so we would get the bonus depreciation. And I remember sitting there, and you know what? My attorney was a good guy. His name was Mark Beglane from Bacon Wilson. They didn't feed us. I was rummaging through people's desks looking for food. You know? They're like, Mark, calm down. And back then, I had my first acquisitions guy. His name was Paul Agassi. What a brilliant, brilliant guy. I mean, brilliant. He had no people skills. He spoke like this. Hi, Mark. How are you? He had total monotone. But the guy was I think he probably had some form of Asperger's because he was so good with numbers. You know, like I do my numbers. I still do my numbers on a pad on the back of a napkin.
Yes.
Okay? Because the numbers don't change. Okay. Here's the rent roll. Here's the gross. Here's what I know that market I'm going to collect in. So here's my adjusted gross. What are the expenses? Here's how I can operate this deal because those numbers aren't real. Okay. Here's the real taxes. Here's the real insurance. Here's my real maintenance. Here's my reserve for replacement. Here's all my other costs. Here's my net operating income. Here's what I'll pay. Okay. You just did the numbers in 5 minutes.
1, 2, 3.
They're all
done.
the same.
Yeah, nothing changes except unless you go out of that municipality. Now, certain things may change. Leaving from a New York City market where you have 50 units on 100 by 100 going up 6, going to 50 units in, let's say, Hudson Valley, where you have 5 different buildings, 10 units each building, walkways, sanitation now you have to pay for, fire you have to pay for, landscaping you have to pay for, snow removal you have to pay for. If you don't know how to buy in that market,
You're dead.
you're done.
Yeah.
You are done. If you operate the way you operated in New York City thinking you were carrying it forward, it ain't happening, man. It is not happening. Septics.
Well, New York is no easy market to operate in.
Oh, no,
okay?
no. But expense-wise.
you got to be good at
Absolutely.
your craft. Okay.
Absolutely.
You know, you can be in other markets and be marginal in your craft and make money.
Yes.
Because of that word called inflation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You still have to buy the deal right. You still have to carry the deal. Still have to control the expenses.
Every deal comes down to one thing: paying the right price. Overpaying will destroy it, if not today, tomorrow. But somewhere down the road, it will fuck you up, for sure.
Have you ever overpaid for a deal?
Never.
Never?
Never.
I can't say that.
I have never overpaid for a deal. I thought I overpaid. There was this one property I bought, and my brother and I picked up, and I remember it was 64 units, and the two buildings, 64 units total, and they wanted 5-1. We offered 3-4. They took it, like that. No comeback.
They were hurting.
And I looked at my brother. I was like, "Oh shit." He said, "What's the matter?"
Could we have offered 3?
I said, "We fucked up."
2.9, 2.8. I know. I've thought of that.
I said, "We fucked up. We offered too low, too high. They would have went lower." He says, "You think?" I said, "Yeah." They took it too quick. I mean, that is ultimately the one time I thought I may have overpaid. And that's not me being like a superstar. That's just me always offering a low number. I mean, even this, look at this 90 unit, this 103 unit, $90 million deal. I told them I'm not coming near this property unless I can get it for $45 million. So, that.
You know they're going to call you back.
Let them call. Let them call. I've got money to move, so let them call.
Well, the lender's going to call you back when it comes back to
He
them.
knew we were there. So, you know what? They know we're ready. It's just a matter of how quick can we close, which relatively quickly.
Well, as long as you do your due diligence.
Yes, of course.
As long as you're familiar with the asset. As long as everything is actually what it says it's supposed to be.
Well, here.
Most people don't verify these things. And,
No.
And I get this from a lot of the students. A lot of students will say, well, the realtor said this. I'm like, look, please, the realtor's not your friend, okay? There's a purpose for them. They'll help you, okay? But you have to verify these things on your own. You have to verify these facts on your own.
Realtor has to sell. You as the purchaser do not have to buy. Be patient. Real estate is going nowhere. It's here today, was here yesterday, it'll be gone tomorrow. It'll be here tomorrow. So wait, I mean, here, that 90-unit building, I'm up top deck I went there with a bunch of students, a bunch of people in my community. I took them up, and now I'm climbing up a ladder on the 50-something floor of the building.
Mm-hmm.
I'm climbing a ladder on top of the steel to get to the chiller. They're looking at me like I'm nuts because I'm 50-some-odd stories above the ground. And I'm climbing this ladder to get inside the chiller so I could see the condition of the chiller. Who does that? You could tell me all day long, I happen to know the business, I happen to know that business. I go in, let me see the machine rooms. Let me go see the pump rooms. I want to see everything because a building that big, there's not enough water pressure to get it up that high, so you have to have pump rooms. If you don't know that, then you don't know that.
Well, if you've never done it,
You will never know it.
you're not going to do it. Okay, people don't even understand. Can you recore a furnace? Of course.
Did you say recore
Recore a
a
furnace.
furnace? What you have to do is change the channels. Not the channels, shit.
It's the channels.
Okay, change out the channels.
Yeah. And how do you do that? Well, you bring in a supplemental furnace, you sit it on the ground, you hook it up, you shut yours down, and then you have it record. And guess what? Here's the best thing. Can you buy insurance for that?
You can.
Called Hartford Steam Boilers.
That's right, and I have it. Thank you.
And you can insure it because guess what? On that 90 units, what do you think the power plant's going to cost? A couple $1 million.
It's a big chunk in a chiller.
Okay? Absolutely.
And now, here's one of those things.
Will they insure those too?
Here's one of those things people never think about. Now, chillers, hospitals have chillers. Chillers are carriers of disease, especially in forced air systems. So now you have all that air passing through the chiller, going into the core line, going down to the floors. So now, if you don't go in there and clean all of the water sitting in the trays, you get this wonderful disease called Legionnaires. Why does Legionnaire's disease start out in hospitals? Because there's so much bacteria floating around in there, and it sits in the trays underneath the chiller system. And that's what happens. You have the A coil, and it sits right below.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
I did not know that.
So when you go into, if you find yourself in a situation where you have to go into a chiller and look around under the coils, you'll see the drains. If that drain's got all that schmegma sitting on top of it, it can turn into a serious disease. And you want to make sure that you want to be nowhere near it.
See, here, the systems are so new. In New York, they're fairly antiquated because the buildings are so old.
Yeah.
Everything here is new. But we still use chiller systems. Absolutely. Okay? They're re-engineered.
Yes.
They're different. They're different.
Before that, and before the pumps, you used to have the rosenwood tanks on the roofs. You remember those?
I do remember those. I do remember those.
The
Did
old wooden
did they
tanks.
outlaw those?
They're still there.
They're still there.
They're still there. As a matter of fact, this building had a rosenwood tank on top of the roof. Still had the tank. Actually, yes, that building had the tank on the roof, going up
Massive.
that high. Yes, going up
Massive.
that high.
Yeah.
And that was not for regular water. Those tanks were for the fire system for the buildings. You know, that's, and every now and then you see them leaking.
That's a whole different thing because,
Yeah.
so here, you know, because you're in a climate that's cold, you need a wet and a dry system.
Yes.
So here our systems are only wet.
Mm-hmm.
So you're only paying half the cost. But everything here has to be sprinklered if you look up.
Oh yeah, it's everywhere.
And is this building sprinklered?
Yes, it
Work,
is.
It's work live space.
Yeah, this is sprinkled.
Oh,
the
there
red
it
pipe
is.
is
There it is.
sprinkled,
Yeah.
and you're in a concrete space. Think of that.
Yeah.
What the hell in this space is going to
Going
burn?
to burn? Nothing.
Right? Maybe
The chairs
maybe
and
the
all that shit. Yeah.
That sprinkler will do more damage than any firewood because there's nothing in here to burn.
I don't know if you have this in New York, okay? Because I've never done a deal in New York. I came close to doing a deal over by Yankee Stadium. What's it's called over there?
Shula Parkway?
The Concord?
Grand Concourse.
Go over by the Grand Concourse.
Right.
Okay. A friend of mine had a deal tied up with a church, and he had financing in place, and he had a HUD contract in place for the deal. Big deal, like 600 units. And I thought it was actually a pretty good deal. And then when I started to dig into it, and I was digging into the pastor from the church, I didn't really like what we found out about him. So we backed away from the deal. It's never gotten built. And the best thing about it was going to shop the deal and going to the Yankee game. That was the best thing about that deal. And I spent a few days there. I stayed in Riverdale because Riverdale's close by. And I will tell you, I don't know what's going on in that area, but it just looked like it was just ready to explode.
And it has.
It has.
It has. I mean, you go down by the market, Hunts Point.
Yeah.
Blew up. You go down by Yankee Stadium, blew up. But now it's going backwards.
Why?
Because of crime.
Because of crime?
Crime is killing it. Insurance is destroying it because insurance has gone up through the roof. Mm-hmm. And I used to be there all the time because I used to go deal with a supplier, two suppliers. I want to say J. Brown, which was the building business supplier. Mm-hmm. What you needed, they had. Okay, no matter what it was, if it was door kicks, things like that, sweeps, everything you wanted for a building, you went in there, and they had it. And you had Hyman and Son for all your plumbing supplies. So you go there, you get your old Gerber brass faucets, last you forever. That's where you shopped. You go and get the metal sink bases, the old, they weren't stainless, they were stamped metal that sat on the 42-inch sink base. Boom, in there. Simple, stupid, easy, done. We used to go down there with the pickup truck, load it up. We'd rent a Ryder truck, load it up, and then bring everything upstate and just put the
I
apartments
used to love
together.
going to those places.
Yeah, yes, they were fun.
I used to like going to the appliance store. I just loved all the new gadgets. But, I mean...
Now it's Home Depot.
We buy the same crap.
Yeah.
So.
Now it's no more appliance store. Now you go to Home Depot. What we do is, or Home Depot or Lowe's, we have the accounts, put everything through the bid room. And, you know, it's not you're buying one or two of anything. You're buying bulk, so, and you have the account. So normally you can get a good deal, but you're always looking for a better deal. You know, QSP, that's what they called it, the bid room there. So, I mean, hey.
Are you using stainless steel or using black?
Stainless steel appliances?
Yeah.
No.
Not for this stuff?
No. Be rest assured. Cheap as it is, as good as it is, it's coming back to you like shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? I don't overbuild. I know better. I don't. No.
So in certain markets, so we're all black now.
Okay.
And we've been that way for the last few years. And as I was saying, we buy all of our appliances through Ferguson Direct.
Okay.
So we buy them in bulk, but then we'll have 100 sets drop shipped to here, or 50 or 150, depending on
Right.
what the deal needs. So, and we do get a pretty decent price.
Well, I would hope so. You're buying 100 pieces, 100 units at a clip, you better be getting a good number. Yeah.
Yeah. No, they've been pretty good. They've been pretty good to us over the years. We've been with them probably 25 years. So, you talked about your community, you talked about your school.
Yeah.
How do people find you?
Well, you can go to my website, paulcarasone.com, and there's a link there that'll take you to my school platform. Or you can just comment private or mentor on my social media. Go to the_property boss on Instagram, and just DM
that's
me.
Instagram.
Yeah.
TikTok,
TikTok is the property boss.
Property Boss.
Yes.
YouTube,
YouTube, the property boss.
The Property Boss.
They're all the property boss except for Instagram. And it's doing well, man. The community's growing.
How big has the community gotten?
Right now, well, if I had to guess from Discord, I was at about 1,200. But now it's more than that, 2,400 in my Discord community. But now we're trying to transfer that over to my school. So it's going to be,
What's a Discord? What's that?
Discord was what school
Is
right now. It was just much more difficult. It was more difficult to monetize, and it had a bad reputation. So now school is the new kid on the block. It's the way to go, and it's
So, yeah, we use School,
Yep.
but we're actually transitioning out to a private label community where it's a better app. It's better. It's on your phone. It's got more bells and whistles.
okay.
So they're building it out. It won't be ready for about 6 to 8 weeks. So we're going to transition out of School because School doesn't allow you, when you get to a certain level, it becomes kind of glitchy. And we
Okay.
don't want to be that way.
So you have something to do with that platform, or
Making it glitchy?
no?
No,
The new
that's
platform you're going on with.
no, we don't have it.
Okay.
It's just a vendor.
Okay.
So, and they're pretty. They came off up front as pretty pricey, but Rob was able to negotiate them down to something that was very comfortable for us to do this. So it's a better execution for the students. Once it's up and running and it's working, if it's good, I'll let you know.
Yeah. Let me know.
Because you
for
can
sure.
always go back to School. The problem with School is because since we started doing the real estate, we added a short-term rental platform and we added a wholesaling platform. So, and now we're starting, this month, we have a fund coming from New York that wants to partner with us as a mortgage company. So we'll do that because there's no reason for us to broker it out in the community because we don't get anything out of it. So, and we lose control over it. This way, we know what our line's going to be, we know what our underwriting guideline is, and we know what we can push through. So, and we'll take the A piece.
Okay.
So we'll put up the capital for the A piece. That should be able to give us at least an 80% leverage, unexperienced, up to 90% for people who are experienced. That's people that have done 3 deals or more.
Okay.
So, and they're flying down from New York, so we'll see.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. When you coming up to New York so we can go to Cats? And
I'll make some plans with you. It needs to be a little warmer, so maybe toward April. We are doing a thing. Tanner, do you know when Smash Week is in Jersey? You do not? Well, you better get your hands around Adrian, the schedule, and talk to Paula, because I know we have a bunch of stuff. You're not with us in LA, right? Christian is? Because you're doing that car thing with your grandfather, your dad? So I think we're going to be up there in maybe late March or early April, and it shouldn't be too cold. So I'll give you a couple weeks notice.
Yeah.
And we're doing this thing. I don't know the name of their firm, but they paid us to come up and they're paying me to speak. But it's a real estate company and they teach you how to buy renovate and flip deals. And it's an amazing concept. The woman is in the community. She's very inactive in our community, but she's got, I think, I don't know if it's 47 agents or 147, but she teaches them how to do a deal. So the smash is the renovation, is the demo.
Right.
So, and they're calling it Smash Week. So she's going to have a bunch of other guys speaking.
Nice.
And I have no idea. You know, I don't plan anything. I don't script anything. I'll just wing it.
I can't script anything.
So
I can't remember. So I'm not scripting anything. Everything I say is from what I've actually done.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah, you know, I can't. You can't come to me and say, "I want you to say this. I want you to say this. I want you to say that," because I won't operate like
I
that.
mean, it's simple. Okay, why is the toilet leaking? Well, the wax ring's probably spent.
Could be the wax ring.
Let's
That's
pull
right.
it. Let's change the wax ring. How many wax rings do you go through? A lot. Okay, what is the best thing to have? It's okay.
Yeah.
Do you know how to sweat a hot water heater? Of course. Okay.
Check the flange. Check.
I don't know how you are. I never, ever, ever liked playing with electrical because I always would jam myself a little bit.
Okay.
So I always stayed away from that.
I do it.
So
I mean,
I can change out a switch, I can change out a breaker, I can do that stuff. But you know what? As I said to you earlier, the day I went inside and
the day
sat
you
at a
started.
desk was when we started to really grow.
Right, and I get that, and that's where I have to get to. I'm there. I just have to. I have to stop myself from being so involved in the little things. However, because I'm always out in the field, I get to see what my workers do, my supers do, and there's two sides to that coin. One is I show them how to do it my way, and then they know I can do it, and they know that I'm not going to accept the bullshit because I know what it takes to do the job far better than they can. You know, yeah, I've been zapped a few times, but you know what? Lick your wounds, and that's that.
How about your first eviction before we wrap this up?
Yeah. You want to hear about an eviction. Forget
Yeah.
about my first eviction. I'm not going to say where,
Okay.
but upstate New York. You know
Yep.
what I will say? Yeah, Pleasant Valley.
Okay.
So now we get to we get to the apartment. Sheriff is there. Sheriff serves. Guy opens up the door. Has a shotgun in his hand. And don't say that because it'll definitely destroy the algorithm. Okay?
Yep.
And pulls the sheriff in. But not to harm the sheriff. He took himself hostage. The sheriff blocked themselves on the door jamb, so he didn't go in.
Mm-hmm.
Now this guy is screaming out the window, "I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that." He held himself hostage. You've got a school across the street from this complex. This
Yep.
is an 80-unit complex. A school across the street, and they evacuate the school. You've got the helicopters flying overhead. You've got SWAT on a building across, aimed at the apartment. And I'm like, damn, they didn't tell me this was going to...
Oh, my God. Unbelievable.
Yep.
But it ended well.
It ended well, yes. It ended very well. No injuries. The guy, I mean, obviously, they put him in the bin for a while. But, hey, we got possession.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all that matters.
That's all that
Okay?
matters. We got possession.
Yeah. That's all that matters. My story doesn't mean is meaningless to yours. But I want to thank you, number one, for coming. Number two, for being so genuine, because this business is actually about real life, real circumstances, solving these things, and actually you can make real money.
Yeah.
So, guys, this is Paul. I'm going to change the name. He's not the property boss. He's the property guru. If you want to learn about real estate, that's the guy. I hope you enjoy this podcast. I hope we didn't bore you with our bullshit, okay? Because this is just two old guys talking about real estate, and we could talk about this shit forever, okay? Because this business, it is a business of memories. It's also a business that can transform your life if you learn how to do this. This is a guy that can teach you. Let's go, baby.